All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Ipperson from Design Wall Studios, and this is the Building Wellness Podcast. And today I have my very good friend, Walter Lourie from Mafi. Manufactures high quality, sustainable, natural wood floors for interiors, like ceilings and walls. And we're really happy. I'm really happy to have Walt here with us today to share everything about wood flooring, the industry, about Mafi, sustainability, health, and well-being. So welcome.
Hi, thanks, Michelle. Really happy to be here. We've been friends a long time. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we met back in, I want to say like 2014 at ILFI, the International Living Future Institute conference. And I walked by the floor and saw you and your display, and I was intrigued. I'm like, these floors are beautiful and I want to know more. And so since then, we
Yeah.
are friends and colleagues and, promoters of healthy and sustainable products for the built environment, and just love everything about Mafi. I mean, their floors are so gorgeous. I mean, I have samples here. I mean, they just smell good. I mean, how often do we go in buildings, and especially new builds, and it's all luxury vinyl flooring and or cheap pre-engineered woods, and the real estate agent showing the house when I used to do intensive inspections, they're like, "Oh, it's just the new house smell."
Yeah, yeah. No,
It
that's not good.
have to be that way. It doesn't.
Yeah,
Let's debunk
not
that,
good.
shall we?
Right. Our bodies aren't used to that smell, so we automatically walk into that and you try to figure out what those smells are, and it creates a stress. Your frontal cortex is trying to recognize what those things are, and that's why your work in the biophilic design sphere and the research that you've done about how humans can react better to your environments with natural materials has helped me to really push the envelope as far as you know interior materials. I think that what we should call ourselves are healthy materials practitioners
Absolutely. I love
or regenerative material practitioners, because we like to we're always learning, and we're always trying to figure out how our bodies react in the spaces that we are. And so, I'm open to anything, but I'm more open to learning how we can more connect with nature. And whatever materials that we work with on a day-to-day basis, it often is a good question to just say, how close is this to what it's meant to be?
right. Before
Yeah.
all of this industrial environment, I remember working for Oracle Corporation as a usability engineer, and albeit the design are beautiful with their their buildings and everything, inside was just fluorescent lights and cubicles and carpeting and no open windows or anything like that. And you're supposed to do these brilliant things for these projects and development and innovation, and it's less than that, and it's not even talking about air quality. But the flooring industry now, I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead. I want to know about how you got into it and more about Mafi and things like that, but I definitely want to touch upon like how the luxury vinyl tile flooring has just screwed up the whole idea of people when they're wanting to add, renovate or build. It's just
Mhm.
like, okay, it looks like wood, so it must be wood, and it's cheap, so let's do it. And then
Yeah.
putting the implications on health and well-being, especially babies and seniors
Right.
and anybody with any health. The thing is, in my background, I've seen, I mean, flooring is the skin of the and the walls. It's like one of the largest surfaces. I don't need to tell you any of this, but I'm talking to our listeners. Um, you want to invest in that. So you want to make sure that all that large surface is good materials, is going to elevate you, because I've seen it firsthand testing in indoor air quality that if the adhesives are used, they've got formaldehyde in them most likely. The pre-engineered wood or luxury vinyl tile. That is polyvinyl chloride.
Yeah,
That's a spill that happened in Ohio that killed all the wildlife and the, went all through the waterways and, poisoned a lot of people. Like, do you want that in your house?
I
No.
don't understand it. It's really really interesting how marketing can make people make decisions that they normally wouldn't if you were to show them the difference and make them understand how important healthy materials are to their well-being because they're spending so much time indoors that you I don't know, you're really particular about buying food that's healthy for you. Like you'll go out of your way and drive an extra 10 miles out of the way to go to an organic market to buy that fresh food, but then you live inside of a plastic bubble
Right.
that you have no control over. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's always emitting it's harmful chemicals. So it's just that people aren't aware. They're just told what to do and they do it. And it's easy.
It can't
It's
be
easy
really
to do it.
harmful for you
Yeah.
because it's everywhere. I mean, that's sometimes even my kids raising them in a healthy environment, they think that if the government or the city says it's okay, then it should be okay. And I'm like,
Yeah.
let's take that back,
Well,
step back and um examine that. And so it's an education. It's an education for people. I've got clients all over the country that, I'm educating about, investing in things that you spend time in that affect your health on such a large scale, like water, air quality, paints, flooring. I mean, flooring is so important. And yeah, I mean, I've tested and there's really nothing you can do. If you've got toxic flooring, you kind of got to get it out. You can't sand it. You can't.
no.
There's nothing you can do. And that stuff will last for many years.
Yeah, EPA did a examination on hazardous materials, and they've only tested like a small handful of 86,000 chemicals that we are interacting with day to day. Interesting is that there are new chemicals being introduced all the time. I think I sent you that article um, about how they're growing marijuana in homes and using pesticides that aren't even listed as chemicals available in the United States, and they're permeating the interior of the space. We are constantly innovating in the artificial world to make things better, quote unquote, right? Let's make it better by increasing the strength of our pesticides and herbicides so that we can be safe, but it's absolutely the opposite. And the government is not the organization that is helping us.
No,
We have to decide on our own what is good for us and how do you do that? How do you balance what is good for you? Is saving a few bucks better for you than just investing a little bit more in natural materials? How many thousands of years have we lived with natural materials before we came across these things like polyurethanes or polyvinyl chlorides or PFAS and all those things that we're adding in to make our lives better? Are they making it better for us? I mean, this is we're finding out. So my background is I grew up on a farm in upstate New York. Then I joined the Air Force for a while. And then I answered an ad in a newspaper for the Burlington Free Press for a wood floor installer. I After the farm went under, I didn't have uh, any reason to do anything but carpentry because I loved carpentry. We've always been building things at the farm. And while I was in the Air Force, I was building houses. I got stationed in Alaska, so I was building houses up there. And then, so I answered this ad in a newspaper. And 2 years later, I left that company because I was being called in to load trucks at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was working 100 hours a week for somebody else. And I decided that I wanted to do it for myself. And I started laying floors all over New England, going to Canada, picking up material and taking it to Massachusetts to install it in somebody else's house. And um, I did that for almost 20 years. And then I was asked to do a project in Boston, and it was for a certain football player that won a couple of Super Bowls. And I installed this floor over top of radiant heat, the warm board, radiant heat with the pipes on top. And I accidentally hit one of the pipes that was feeding the water through the heating system, and I didn't know it. It happens. You just do. You just hit a pipe. And I got called back 6 weeks later because the contractor said, I'm stepping on this particular board and water would come out of the knot on the surface. I'm like, must be I hit a pipe with a nail. So let's go investigate. So I drove down there 3.5 hours, drove down there, tore up that one board where we saw the leak, and that's where I actually hit the pipe with the nailer. And we spliced that heating pipe, dried out the subfloor with the hair dryer, installed the new board, and the entire floor was perfect. 6 weeks of water going through that area on the apartment. Is a $12 million place, and none of the boards were damaged.
Absorbed it.
So I was like, wait a second, there's something about this. It turns out it was a Mafi floor, and the way that it's built is with the 3 layers, solid wood, glued, like original plywood, where there's a top layer of solid wood, a bottom layer of solid wood, and in the middle, the boards are going perpendicular, and it can get wet.
Yep.
And it doesn't change the dynamics of the board itself, because there's the reactive center. And so I started investigating who Mafi was, and decided that I want to work for them. It didn't happen until after I sanded the floors at the National Gallery of Art and realized that we had to replace a board. There's a 80-year-old floor that has never had polyurethane on it. It's only been a floor that's been coated with wax. And they wanted to change out the wax because the solvents that are in the wax were making it so they basically had to shut down the gallery every time they wanted to re-wax the floor. So they wanted to change it out. So I said, well, why don't we use the system that Mafi does, where we just coat it in oil and then you wash it with soap and water. And I think that was the original intent from John Russell Pope when he designed that floor. But that floor was we had to replace a board, and we discovered that floor was a 3-layered system as well. And 80 years with only wax, 5 million people a year walking on it, has been transformed to a oiled surface. I was like, oh, wow, this is really, really phenomenal to have a floor that's completely flat and that many people on it. Plus, it can be completely wet based on the experience in Boston. And so I had an opportunity, and I jumped on a plane and went to Austria. And then I learned why they make that 3-layered system. It's not because of the stability. Well, it is partly. It's not because it stays flat. It's because of that. Mafi wants to have a human wood relationship. We want and believe that wood and humans evolved together, right? We have used wood to build homes, to build our bowls, to build our tools, to build our weapons, to every aspect of our lives was associated somehow with wood. We have that innate connection. I don't know if anyone of your listeners would know, but we are actually sharing DNA. We have 24% of our DNA that we share. We're both 16% carbon. We both have a life expectancy of about 80 years living, right? A tree is really at its peak at about 80 to 120 years, and that's kind of the same with humans. So we have that relationship also where we breathe out carbon dioxide, and the tree takes it in and then makes oxygen for us. So we are always in that relationship, and it's not just because wood is a fiber, but it's the tree and the forest, and how we have those medicinal aerosols that we receive from the trees and the plants that make us relax, make us calm. Every time you go into the forest, you're like, all right, I know where I am. It's safe here. This is good. And if you pay attention when you're in the woods, then you'll be able to receive that. That's why the Japanese national health system incorporates forest bathing to relieve signs of depression and anxiety. That relationship is there, and we know it's there. There's 265 studies that prove that wood and humans benefit from each other. And the only way you can make that relationship is by not adding anything, by not putting that barrier on the top of polyurethane. Because when you touch wood, then you're actually recognizing that that is okay, right? We understand what we're touching. When we go to IKEA or another store that has a laminate floor in it, if you look down and you're trying to see if that floor is really wood or not, that's a stress. That's your brain going, what am I looking at? What I don't understand it. And then when you walk on it and it goes clickety clickety click, that's definitely not wood. And you're not in a comfortable. Who doesn't get lost in an IKEA? I mean, everybody gets lost in IKEA because you're confused. Everything smells. Everything's got some kind of weird thing in it. But when you go to a forest, you don't care if you're lost because you're in a safe place.
The wolf.
Yeah, right. Or a bear. But so Mafi wanted to create that dimension or that communal relationship. And so from the beginning, 1919, when they started, they never once used a polyurethane. They've always allowed us to interact directly with wood. And the way that we take care of wood is the same way we take care of our hands. So you think about a cutting board, you put chicken on it one day, you wash it with soap and water, and then you can put vegetables on it and you don't get sick. It stains from beets or from tomato sauce or something like that. You just wash it a couple of times and then it's fine. And that's how wood is as a surface. So for some reason in the 50s, we decided that polyurethane was going to be our savior, so we wouldn't have to wash out those stains that naturally appear in wood. So now we have.
You know why? Maybe I'm thinking about the high heels. The high heels making the divots.
Maybe.
No, maybe not. I just had a thought on that.
Well, I think that what we did in the past was we used beeswax, and we had natural linseed oils and tung oils, and that's what we would use, and we would suspend pigments in those oils to make the color, or we would make dyes and stain the wood with the dyes, and then we wanted to kind of protect it. Solid wood moves like crazy. Everybody knows that if you pour water on wood, that it's a solid piece is going to react. Who hasn't seen a dishwasher explosion accident, right? When you're close to the dishwasher and you get water on it, then it starts to separate the boards. Big time problems, right? And so we're trying to avoid that with these wider planks that were built in the 1500s, 1600s. So they put beeswax on it so that it would repel the water. But it created also a shine, and they liked that shine. So we wanted to keep the shine. And the only way to do that was to buff the wax and keep buffing the wax. So every week you'd have to polish the floor. And polyurethane came in as the remedy for not having to polish the floor. You just coat it and you're done. One and done. And now we've got great variations of it with water-based urethanes and things like that, but it's still creating that plastic barrier between you and the wood fibers. And that's what we want to avoid, because once you create that barrier, then you get rid of all of the benefits of the natural part of the wood. And so how can you make it so that you're having that relationship, you're putting tons of water on it to wash it. How do you make it so that it doesn't move? Well, you make it with those 3 layers like Michelle showed you in the picture. It's just 3 solid layers of wood glued in separate directions. And I discovered, well, maybe I didn't discover it, somebody discovered that the ancient Egyptians did that when they built their coffins. They were the first ones to do it 2,500 years ago. And then they developed plywood in the 50s and the 60s. And then in the 70s, we decided to make engineered floors that way. I think it was Cares or Junkers or one of those companies that started gluing a thin veneer on top of plywood and then coating it with polyurethane so you never got it wet. That's what made engineered floors cheaper. And as you know, that plywood typically has lots of phenol formaldehydes in it, and that would off gas. And so we don't want to have plywood. So if you use the old style of gluing those 3 layers together, using just a simple white glue, the same one that we made fingerprints with in our kindergarten class, then you can wash it with soap and water and it doesn't move. So I was totally blown away by that statement that a polyurethane floor is no longer a wood floor, even though it could be some super rare species taken out of a barn that was torn down. It was built by, one of the lords of England. So what if you coat it in plastic? Now you're not taking care of the wood anymore. You're taking care of the plastic that was applied to the top.
And then you're walking
So
on it.
a plastic floor, a wood floor that's coated in polyurethane, it's a plastic floor supported by wood. It's not a wood floor anymore.
Yep, I hear you. I hear you.
So that's a long story just to tell you
I
that
love
I
that
grew up,
though. No, I love that. It's super wood nerdy, and I was hoping that we'd get there with you, and we did. So that's wonderful. And that's what it is. It's about being conscious of the materials that we're putting in our environment. And yes, we are spending time. I'm here in my office. You're in your office, and it's important to consider that. I I I just hope that this gets through to people that they when they're making their choices, when they're needing to choose between products, they're going to consider using something that is not toxic and that they can connect with. Because I remember when we went to Seattle a few years ago with you and a few other people to step on Mafi floors with our socks or bare feet and walk around. It just, you walk in from the concrete drive walkway and you get into the house and you take your shoes off. And I tell people this all the time. It's like walking on the forest. It's just all of a sudden you just ground. It could be super busy outside and crazy and whatnot. And then you get in and you just feel grounded. You feel like it's a hug. It's the most wonderful experience. I remember it to this day. And you also talk about wood is a natural. What do you say about EMFs? It's an absorbent to EMFs, to electromagnetic fields.
well, there's a whole
Grounding.
thing about negative ions and waterfalls and how wood is hygroscopic. So I came up with this term. I don't know if it really is a thing that it is, but I know that wood is hygroscopic. Hygroscopic just means that it's like a sponge. So you pour water on one little part of a sponge and the whole sponge becomes wet. And that's hygroscopic. So the water's moving from one place to another. And wood does that. Wood does that too. It's a sponge. And so when that water goes into the wood and then evaporates out because it has to, because it can't stay wet, wood has to release the moisture, and that creates a cycle where the water's going into the air and wood reacts to humidity. So if it's more humid in the air, the wood is going to absorb it. But while it's doing that, absorbing that water, it's pulling all the toxins that are floating around in the air with it. So if, say, in your space, how many things are completely natural? And you're probably going to have an advantage because you do more than most as far as having natural materials around you.
Yeah,
But anybody that's listening,
yeah.
think about your space and how many surfaces are completely natural.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
Okay. So I've got a desk made of bamboo and steel. I have a armoire cabinet drawers made of solid wood. I've got a chest of drawers, kind of like a little table, solid wood, antique. I have a steel bookcase, and then I've got a quartz and steel table.
Okay, what's on the walls?
Walls are, this is on this wall, it is a natural soundboard, so acoustic board underneath. and drywall, and then behind it is wool insulation, and then on top of it is AFM Safe Coat primer and AFM Safe Coat paints, all non-hazardous pollutant paints, non-toxic.
Right. Like I said, you would have the advantage because you already are way ahead of this. But most people have painted walls, lacquered table, like probably your armoire is coated in varnish.
Yep.
Probably your bamboo table is coated in polyurethane,
It is actually.
some kind of sealer. Then you have glass on your windows.
Yep, glass. Yep.
Yeah, and so most people don't have a natural open porous system. Like my walls here are Mafi boards that are completely open.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about that too because that's a new product to Mafi. You want to talk about these?
Sure. That's a wall paneling that's meant to you can go vertical or horizontal. And that is Swiss stone pine. That's actually one that's proven to reduce your heart rate 3,000 beats a night.
Talk
We
more
could go
about
long into how that works. But I want to just make the argument that during that cycle of the water going in and out, if your walls are coated in something that is a barrier, all of your furniture is coated in a barrier, your floor is coated in a polyurethane, all your furniture is coated in some kind of thing for stain resistance, then everything is just bouncing all over each other, right? And the only thing that is absorbing is our nose, our skin, right? Our body is absorbing all of those toxins because we're not meant to be inside. We're meant to be outside. We only did this as a shelter. Building homes is meant to keep us out of the rain and out of the sun. It should be a reflection of the outside world because that's where we've evolved. But we have made it quote unquote safe by making it easy to clean by coating it in plastic. But if everything is coated in plastic, then we're the ones that are absorbing.
right, and then there's this
Uh,
stuff as well, and yeah, I mean, oftentimes too, people have, or I say, I love my combination as a designer is yes, wood flooring, but then also have a wool rug over it because you need the wood absorbs, of course, but the rug also absorbs, and then you vacuum it and whatnot. But so you need some form of absorption to be able to, or else it's just like for the air quality, it's just going to fly around. It's not going to absorb. It's just going to be on the surface, especially if you have animals. We both have
yeah,
animals. I've got a dog and two cats. You have two dogs and a cat, and you have chickens.
3 dogs
Oh, three
and a
dogs.
fat cat and 6 chickens, but the chickens don't live in the house.
Although I remember one time, 2020, this time 2020, I think we had a huge wildfires all around us in Oregon, and it was the worst air in the entire world. And I actually did bring my chickens inside, and yeah,
I know.
it's just awful. I'm like, my girls. So,
Yeah.
or just
No, so if you have a floor, that's where everything gravity is going to take it down to. But also if it's open and it's actually pulling those toxins that are coming off the fire retardants in your furniture or coming off the plywood that's off gassing or your clothing, which is plastic, or all the things that you put in your hair or on your face and all those things that come off of everything can go into the floor. You wash it with hot water and soap and you take it and pour it down the drain.
right,
That's one huge benefit of having an open aspirated wood surface. And it doesn't have to be a Mafi floor. It just has to be natural wood. So if you already have an existing floor that's coated in polyurethane, like beautiful Douglas fir in Oregon and
yeah,
Washington, sand it off. Just coat it in oil and wash it with soap and water. It's going to do the same thing. I'd rather do that than have you buy something from Austria, ship it across the world, tear out that thing and throw it in the garbage. Right?
use what you
Makes no
have.
sense.
I love that. I love that idea. Now, talk to me about this. I mean, I'm an indoor air quality expert and deal with mold remediation. I consult with people all over about testing and remediation and making their environment so it is more natural. It's not too humid. It's not too dry. It's just right. So, but
Right.
people are concerned about mold. Now, let's talk about that because I think a lot of people they like the waterproofing. They like the thing that we're super scared about mold. They don't want to have any water go on the floors or in the crevices and in the walls or anything like that. And God forbid any mold was to come. Talk to me about how Mafi tackles that and how you can have a nice wood floor, put soap and water on it and not have the water go away. I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear it from you.
So it's very interesting. One of the studies that I looked at was with cutting boards, and it was at the University of Cal Davis. It's an older one from the 90s, but they did a study where they took a brand new, unused plastic cutting board and measured the amount of bacteria on it. They took a very old piece of wood that had been used for many, many years as a cutting board and measured the amount of bacteria that was on that board. And they found less on the old board than on the brand new unused piece of plastic cutting board. So I tried to think about why that would be, and I think the reason is that hygroscopic uh, part of wood, that if there is moisture in this place, an overabundance of the moisture, that the wood will pull it away from that center place and distribute the moisture because it has to. But the cells that wood are made out of can only hold so much water. And the way that the tree moves water from the ground up the trunk to the leaves is by passing it through one cell to the next, all the way to the top. And so it's designed to move the moisture around. And once it has its full amount of moisture and it can't take any more, then it starts to release it because it has to maintain its shape by moving moisture in and out of the fibers or the cells, right? So long story saying that the wood will dry itself out like a towel. If you hang a towel out, it dries out by itself. But if you put that towel inside of a saran wrap, it's never going to dry. And that's where you get the mold. The
But
same with coating it in polyurethane,
yeah,
right? So a floor can be coated in polyurethane and you think that there's no moisture getting in there? Well,
yeah,
what happens when the boards expand and contract and the moisture can get in on the side? And it goes underneath that polyurethane, and then it has to come out somehow. It usually comes out through the top, and that's where you get a crack, and then the cancer spreads, and that's where you get the mold. You get mold because it gets trapped underneath the polyurethane.
right. I hear you. And so, yeah, if you have the coating over it, the water, it's going to find its way under the baseboards and up the wall. It's going to find its way and it's not going to be able to absorb. But I will tell you this too about if that's all fine and good to have the wood absorb it, right? But if you have a very humid and cold environment, it's really important to have the right temperature with your wood floors, right? It's really important to have that your humidity is under control, that the temperature.
No,
I deal with clients all over that like they have a couple different houses here and there, or they're on vacation and they go in the wintertime and they don't turn their heaters on. They leave them off. And so when they come back, the windows are all condensated. There's that mold there, and that's where mold can grow. So it's I love your point, but it also is really important to support the environment as well by making sure that you have at least 65-degree temperatures um, when you're there or not there always, and monitoring your air with good air monitors. We've got some good ones on our site, and an air filter. Just making that harmonious, good environment, but then not giving mold a chance to survive. It's just another layer to if you think about it, right?
mm-hmm. We have a project in northern Canada where the clients shut the house down in September, don't have any heat. They shut the water off, drain the pipes, everything. They leave it until they come back in April, and they turn the heat back on, and no issues. Of course, that's not. I don't know the whole system, if it's a completely enclosed or if it's one of those old places where it just breathes. You know, the windows have gaps and that kind of thing. So
I
there's
like
a lot of old,
that.
yeah, a lot of old houses that I grew up in. The windows vented on purpose, you
Right.
know, because no insulation and you just have to let it breathe, and it's 150 years old and no rot, no damage anywhere.
Yeah, I know
But
that. We just had our house re-insulated, and the walls were not totally insulated. We have a 1950s house, and carbon dioxide is a thing. We didn't have any issues with it before because we didn't have a lot of insulation in our walls. But then we put this good insulation in our walls, and that we monitor our air, of course. And we now have to put, well, we leave the windows open. We've got a little fan, but now we've got to put a heat recovery ventilation unit in
wow,
to keep that air going, because then you have, we've got a kind of a big family, and people come visit and stay with us, or we have friends over, and then I'm looking at my monitor, I'm like, I gotta open the windows, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So it's just, every environment's different, but I think that when you have the nuts and bolts taken care of, like the walls, the ceilings, the floors, you have your envelope taken care of. There's also, obviously a lot of other things to do with the building and building envelope, but if you have those big basic things taken care of and invest your money into them, and yeah, spend just a little bit more money on it, it's gonna pay you back. I always tell my clients is either invest up front just a little bit more, or pay a ton more later in health bills.
yeah. Let me tell you how little it is too. So in Austria, the normal budget over the entire house budget. So you decide you're going to build a new house, and it costs this much money, right? 600,000, whatever it is. And the normal budget in Europe for wood floors or for flooring in general is around 3%. Okay. In the United States, the budget is less than 1%
They don't
for
value
floors.
it. Yeah.
Why? I don't understand this. Why the most important, most foundational part of your build, right? The one that all design is based upon, right? In the entire space. The one that you step on, the last thing you step on when you leave the house, the first thing you step on when you get in the house, you use it constantly. It's got to perform for at least 50 years, is less than 1% of the budget. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I want to just try to convince builders. They're the ones that are the biggest culprit. The builders and the end users think that floor should be $3 a foot, no question. Builders think it should be $1 a square foot. I don't know what they're thinking, but they just don't care that it's just a floor.
It's an acceptance of society because of the luxury vinyl tile flooring business. They've got it so cheap, got it manufactured overseas, and tons of chemicals, and it looks like wood. They don't have to do anything. It's a one and done kind of a thing. It's just this, they've set it up this way. And so it's very, very difficult to, that's not very difficult, but like to have people unlearn that, and to realize that these touch points, these connections, have you have little kids that are learning to walk, that are crawling on the floors. I had a client who bought a new spec house, or new house that a builder built, that they were going to move in, but they decided not to. In fact, I had it on Mafi.com as a interview, and they lived there for 3 months when they just moved in. They had a baby and like a 2 or 3 year old, and the baby started developing asthma, and we did some research, and I did, if you can read about it on my blog, I will put a link to it. But in the end, we found that the flooring was pre-engineered vinyl flooring, and they put adhesives underneath it with formaldehyde, and then they put an ozonator in the system. When you put ozone in, when you have chemicals, it creates new chemicals, and if you don't clean it stays there, and it just is this new element of toxins. So super important that we consider our surfaces, and that
Sure.
yeah, our touch points, our mattresses, our flooring, our furniture. Where are we engaging and spending time with? Like, I just did this interesting, I think I talked about it yesterday on my podcast too, about how linen and wool and organic cotton have frequencies. It'd be really interesting to talk about with the wood frequency. So let's nerd out about that. Let's do a little research and see what the frequency of wood is. But they said if you mix linen with wool, they negate themselves. It's like 5,000, whatever the measurement is each. And when you put them together, they negate themselves. So if I was wearing, both they were talking about clothing, if I was wearing like a wool sweater and a linen shirt, it would be negated. But if you
Uh,
just wore a wool sweater, you would get the benefits of the frequency. So it'd be
uh,
really interesting to look at the frequency of wood and how that measures in an environment for because people are looking for that. I mean, people are really looking to heal, to thrive,
mhm.
to have something. And I'll tell you this, for all my years consulting and doing inspections and design, that people, peace of mind is priceless. But if you don't have peace of mind, if you're in that worry zone, wondering if it's causing you health issues or not sure about something, you don't have all the information, that itself is like a virus. And
Mhm.
once you quell that with information, when they know what's in their environment, they can connect to it and they don't have to worry about it. They know it's good.
Yep.
And that
Yeah.
helps their them to ground, to have less anxiety and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Well, my goal is to just make people aware that there is a possibility for a natural connection in an interior by using certain types of surfaces. And I would say wool, stone, brick, and wood are four of the big ones that you can really have that connection and feel safe with that. Um, and that we this is what our whole mantra is. This is why we went and got the Living Product Challenge certification. This is why we're 100% declare label red list free, third party verified. We have a health product declaration just to let everybody know that there's no magic curtain. There's
Right.
no surprise with this. This is something that we've known for 100,000 years, that wood is safe and it's good for you. So it's just, if you don't want to put it on the floor or can't invest in the wall or you can't put it on the ceiling, well, just think about your choices when you go to buy a new cabinet and you're going to introduce this new thing. Find out who's made it, where it's from, what's it made out of. Is it natural? Is it coated in anything? Can you just react with the product itself? I don't care if it's wood or whatever it is, but just stay away from those barriers made with PFAS and with all the other hazardous chemicals. I mean, you talked about at the beginning, that East Palestine spill. Can you imagine the poor people that are building that chemical?
Oh,
Say nothing about the guys that are driving the train or the person that is pumping it into that, into that train car, but the people that are making it. And now we're adding that to the interior of our house, letting our babies crawl around on that stuff. It's
full
incredible.
life cycle span of that is
It's
toxic.
incredible.
No, I agree. And I'm going to be doing more of these with you, hopefully, because this has been really wonderful, insightful. And you and I have so much to talk about. We always do. And I definitely want to explore more the biophilic elements of that.
Yeah. We didn't even touch anything,
I know. I
hardly.
think
We
we're gonna
just,
do that for next time. We're gonna geek out on why it's good for humans.
yeah.
Why would how we connect to it. We just touched upon a bit of it, but I think that for next time, let's totally geek out on biophilia, because I'll tell you this: when I learned about the study from Roger Ulrich back in the '80s about how to, well, maybe I'm gonna leave that for next time. I'm gonna tell my inspiration of basically I've been doing biophilic design forever. And I didn't even know about the term until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's one of those innate things, like of course
Yeah.
now it's like cool and like, let's talk about it. And some of it is not installed or I don't know what to say, done right, I should say. It's more of like a greenwashing. It's like a biophilic washing.
Yeah, so got a plant in the corner. Yeah, we're good.
That's not biophilia. I thought
Yeah,
that's a plant in the corner, but I mean, it's a
yeah,
start. Yes. But yeah, I'd love to be able to talk more about that and have maybe a little lesson on biophilic design and how wood elements really play upon that, and how maybe we can showcase some of Mafi's projects and that
sure.
all over.
Yeah,
So thank you so much, Walt.
you're welcome. Great to see you. I look forward to the next one, and I'm sure we'll talk in the meantime.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will send you the information about this and let our users know about the links and more about Mafi and how they can learn more about it and put it in their next projects.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle.
Great day. Thank you. Bye.